If you were watching MSNBC last night, you were treated to one of the most startling examples of low-life, two-face hypocrisy. This is what happened. It was during the Ed show, which nobody watches, at 6 o'clock, and Chunk was filling in.
It's Cenk, actually.
It's what?
Cenk Uygur.
Chunk? It looks like Chunk. In any case, Chunk was filling in, and they didn't even tell him what was coming. He's in there doing the Ed show. He's a substitute host, some guy named Chunk Uygur, and he's, they didn't even tell him what's happening. When suddenly there was a news break. Listen to how this went down.
And Mike Tyson and Lindsay Lohan might actually determine the result of an election in Florida. I'll tell you why when the Ed show continues here on MSNBC.
Okay, here comes the commercial. Oops, commercial stop. Oops, what's this?
We interrupt our regular programming to report that as of later this evening, all American combat troops will have left Iraq. Wow. Thousands have already left the country by air, and the remaining few hundred will be traveling by land. An extraordinary exclusive report, MSNBC and NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is embedded with those troops and will be reporting live and on tape as they symbolically close an extraordinary chapter in the history of this nation, in the history of that nation, and in our modern world. I'll be joined by Rachel Maddow, who is in the green zone in Baghdad, along with Chris Matthews, Lawrence O'Donnell, Gene Robinson, General Paul Eaton, Colonel Jack Jacobs, and many others.
All those guys got told, but Chunk didn't get a word.
It's actually Cenk, but...
Cenk?
I think we get your point.
Yeah, John?
Yes?
His name is Cenk.
Chunk.
John.
So, let's contrast the tone with this triumphalism where the last troops are leaving Iraq with Bata Boy not that long ago.
War in Iraq, your war, Mr. Bush, is about how you accomplished the derangement of two nations and how you helped funnel billions of taxpayer dollars to lascivious and perennially thirsty corporations like Halliburton and Blackwater, and how you sent 4,000 Americans to their deaths for nothing.
Well,
victory.
We changed the tone now. The tone is much more... Well, we're here on the edge of history.
The military could have done this quicker. They didn't have to take this long. The deadline set by President Obama was to have all combat reasons. You never want to let people know too much in advance time where you'll be traveling. It is a recipe for disaster. So the troops here decided to jump the gun a little bit and leave tonight. But they could have been gone earlier. It has not been a logistical pressure.
Richard Engel's a fine foreign correspondent and war correspondent. Of course, he's got Bata Boy and Rachel Maddow breathing down his neck. But what was it he said?
The deadline set by President Obama.
The deadline set by President Obama. The Status of Forces Agreement was the deadline set by President Bush, wasn't it, Angry Rich?
The beginning part, yes. The troops out of the cities and all troops out of Iraq by the end of 2011.
So Obama just threw in a new deadline here in the middle
End of August.
So, but at the end of August, we're going to have them all out. By the way, are they all out? I mean, NBC's making a big deal about this. Are they all out?
Not all of them, no.
There's still 6,000?
Another 6,000, yeah.
Combat troops still there?
And then aren't 50,000 troops going to be there to oversee things?
Well, I guess, but if all the
Thankfully.
combat troops are gone, I mean, they must have left the cooks behind.
They didn't, no.
I'm sure they need to have people there still because you can't just cold exit there.
Well, the point of it is, okay, let's put it this way. NBC got a scoop. The last American combat troops leaving the country near our satellite truck did get out. And Bata Boy, who was, it wasn't that long ago, who was literally frothing at the mouth about the Iraq war.
This war of lies.
All of a sudden, he had to take on a more high-minded tone.
The thing that just hit me was watching that shot of Richard, and as informative as he was, my attention was drawn to a flap over his left shoulder that was opening in the back of the vehicle, and you could see the headlights of the striker behind him. There's something so symbolic of what we were just seeing there that to me summed this night up.
Oh, that's something? This is one that sums up for me.
The Democratic leadership has agreed to finance the deaths of Americans in a war that has only reduced the security of Americans.
Well, I guess we had to change the tone a little here. Let's remember what MS was saying about the war.
I have been a voice out there against this bullshit war from the beginning.
Lieutenant DeWitt, that's obviously you weren't listening because you went and joined while they were saying that, and then turn out you're one of the last ones to leave.
I knowingly joined the military knowing I would most likely deployed to Iraq, to actually be part of that last unit coming out is a huge amount of pride for me. To be able to say, yes, we were the last combat unit in Iraq. We were the ones that finished that combat mission, and we did it. We did a really good job.
They did a really good job. They did. And I didn't see anybody mentioning George W. Bush. Well, Bathtub Boy wouldn't have done that.
Mr. Bush, our presence in Iraq must end, even if it means your resignation.
Oh, nice. Remember those days?
When they tried to lose the war? Yeah, I do.
Well, here we have the people who tried to lose the war now taking a bow for it.
Resign. 2,666 days since President Bush declared mission accomplished in Iraq. 2,708 days since American forces invaded Iraq. At this hour, American combat forces are leaving Iraq with Rachel Maddow inside the Green Zone in Baghdad and Chris Matthews, Lawrence O'Donnell, Eugene Robinson, Howard Feynman, Jim Miklaszewski at the Pentagon, retired General Paul Eaton, retired Colonel Jack Jacobs, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, and former Weapons Inspector Charles Dulfer. From Baghdad, from the Iraq-Kuwait border, from Washington, from New York, this is Countdown's special continuing live coverage of the end of America's Iraq combat mission.
Sounds like they told everybody but Chunk.
This war of lies.
So it's disgusting, by the way.
Well, it's
that scumbag tried to lose the war for the better part of 4 years.
Oh, well, let's not forget his worthy leader.
Given the deteriorating situation, it is clear at this point that we cannot, through putting in more troops or maintaining the presence that we have, expect that somehow the situation is going to improve.
Well, that was the surge is what won this war, and Bathtub Boy and Chris Matthews and the now president himself were all against that.
My assessment is that the surge has not worked, and we will not see a different report 8 weeks from now.
Bush got the war done. Bush did the surge and won. Bush did the status of forces agreement that got us out of Iraq. The only thing Obama did was walk in and say, well, let's hurry up and get out a little bit faster. Richard Engel, weirdly enough, in the middle of all this MSNBC drooling, gave the troops credit for winning this war.
He and his men were asked here for a combat mission. They were asked to build the Iraqi security forces. They did that. They were asked before that to stop a civil war. They did that. They were asked to topple a dictator. They also did that. So militarily, I think these soldiers do have a lot to be proud of.
Topple a dictator, that was the invasion, of course. That was
this war of lies.
That was a war of lies. Win the surge, which, of course, was...
My assessment is that the surge has not worked, and we will not see a different report 8 weeks from now.
And, of course, the last thing they did was set up a functioning democracy.
What is the president and my friend from Arizona is insisting on? What can never be a central government that is a democracy that is going to be fair to the rest of its citizens. It is not possible. Mark my words.
You sent 4,000 Americans to their deaths for nothing. John Gibson of Fixed News, today's worst person in the world.
Always striving to be the worst to Bathtub Boy.
You should crawl off into a hole and die.
But the best to you. John Gibson.